What is going on, everybody? It is the one and only Q from Retro Q Gamer back at it as always. Here we are, in effect, despite all the craziness and madness that is going on in the world these days, with our 50th episode of our Quack experimental podcast. We do have one more week before we hit that 1 year anniversary. You may be wondering how that adds out, but, well, dates are a crazy thing like that, and days of the week and whatnot. And of course, naturally, you do see me here the entire time. No coronavirus. We are nice and safe and secure. Why, you might be asking? Well, as an immortal person once said, I am invincible. So, yes, me and Boris. Although Boris didn't really. It doesn't matter. Me. That's all that matters. Because naturally, I am invincible. Now, we don't have much to talk about this week, topic-wise. It is very, very next-gen focused. Some of it is up in the air, some of it is confirmed, some of it is all over the place. But anyway, let's grip it and rip it, as they say in some circles. So first up, we'll talk about the PS5. Now, we do have a bit of info regarding the PS5 and their whole deep dive, put you to sleep, shuck and jive. But, well, you can also call it the Mark Cerny ASMR. But anyway, we're going to look a bit about the PS5 backwards compatibility. Now, I took these notes in two different portions because one of it, the first half basically, was what I was kind of revealed and hinted at and the way it was worded at earlier in the week. And then there was some slight clarification later in the week, but not 100% confirmation, again because of wording and the exclusion of certain things, phrases and dates and whatnot too. So originally, well, this one seems to go hand in hand, actually. I'm going to talk about this one first. This hasn't been clarified in any way and hasn't been reconfirmed, deconfirmed, whatever it is. So we all know that the Xbox is going to have a smart delivery system. So if you have an Xbox One version of a game and you put it into the Xbox and the developers opted in to use the service, it will download the Xbox upgrade for you for free. Think Cyberpunk 2077. If you have the Xbox One version, whenever the Xbox version becomes available, if you put the Xbox One disc into the Xbox, you download and get a free upgrade and all. Remember, there's a couple of caveats with that. Not every developer has to use it. It is completely opt-in. They may charge you for it, or they may do it separately, or whatever it is. So that's the quick gist version of that. So far, there is no confirmed equivalent of smart delivery on the PS5. So for all we know, and if you put in, let's say, I don't know, a PS4 game, if there's a PS5 version available, it may not give you a free PS5 version. It occurs to me, or at least in my mind, that I think Sony will go ahead with this for first-party games, but I don't think they'll offer it as a whole console-wide service, opt-in, opt-out, whatever it is. I don't know, I could see them potentially doing it in certain games, like I said, mostly first-party games. But anyway, we have to wait and see. The consoles aren't out for many, many months at this point, later this year, so anything can happen in the meantime. Now, originally, during the whole Mark Cerny deep dive thing, when he talked about the architecture, the CPU and whatnot, the way he worded backwards compatibility for the PS5, originally it was, with his quotes and his words and whatnot, he basically said most of the top 100 played games. Now, at the time, with the wording and all that, it was kind of hinted that they just analyzed using that section of games and they looked at it that way, but the wording was unclear, so no one is 100% sure how it was going to be. Now, personally, I would love to see that list if it was true, but I will say I'm pretty sure it's mostly Minecraft, a shitload of FIFA every year, a shitload of every year's COD game, a shitload of GTA 5, and, well, that would probably be half the list right there. Now, back to the rest of it. So, a couple of days later, all of this naturally had sparked massive negative headlines, and Sony came out with a little bit of a clarification. Not a 100% clarification, but Sony came out and said that thousands of PS4 games had already been tested on the PS5 using backwards compatibility, and how they would run with the clock frequencies, the GPU, the CPU and whatnot. And many of them, even without tweaking at all, some of them require tweaking on a game per game basis, will be running at naturally higher frame rates and naturally higher resolutions than before. So that way it will either automatically do it or there's a quick change on there too, similar to what the Xbox version has. Although if you remember when we talked about what's going to happen with this Xbox, yeah, that one sounds a bit more impressive than the PS5 version. But anyway, back to the point here. So, because the messaging with all of this is so mishmash, it's so completely all over the place and absolutely, well, a bit of a disaster, hopefully it properly gets detailed and clarified before launch. And remember, they said thousands of games have been tested and are up and running and all that as well. Hopefully all this happens at launch. Hopefully it's not just select games, the most majority, if you will, of the top 100 games. And hopefully it's not going to be patched in with more and more games, eventually leading to that 1,000, 4,000, I believe, actually, now that I think about it, down the line. But yeah, hopefully we can all get that stuff up as soon as possible, because I don't know, maybe just sometimes I like to play The Last of Us remastered. I'm tempted to play it now. I'll probably play it just before The Last of Us Part 2 comes out. But yeah, you see the point here. But sticking with next-gen stuff, we're going to talk about next-gen consoles and next-gen performance. Now, before we go into this section, of course, I do want to throw out there that take this with a massive grain of salt, big heaping, almost suicidally dangerous level bowl of salt. Simply because it's unconfirmed, not so much unconfirmed, I shouldn't say unconfirmed. It's unconfirmed that this will be the final product, that this will be the end version of it, the end variant, and it's unclear if this will apply across the board. Now, we're going to talk about ray tracing. Specifically, we're going to talk about the Xbox version of ray tracing, because we finally have some hint, some semblance of how that's going to work on the Xbox. Now, the biggest problem before we move any further in this conversation is that ever since the Xbox was launched, they've been throwing around big marketing buzzwords. Pretty much everyone you could think of. 4K, 8K, 60 FPS, 120 FPS, ray tracing. So they've been throwing these around all in the same sentence. All in the same sentence. Now, it turns out that the Xbox, which remember, is the most computable power, performance, whatever, the stronger and faster of the two consoles. Well, we have early indications. Remember, early indications, not indications of what every other game will be like, not any indications that this will be the final product, because there's still time to improve and optimize it and all as well. But woolad, this has me very, very worried for the next consoles and what they've been marketing and all as. Now, we're going to use Minecraft, of all things. That's right, Minecraft, that game that is incredibly fun whenever you can sit down and dedicate the time to it, that looks like digital Lego. By no means is it the most demanding game in any way, shape or form. But the Xbox, the most powerful console ever made when it comes out, runs Minecraft with ray tracing. Yes, it is absolutely true, it does run it with ray tracing. Now, we have some big caveats. Remember all that marketing buzz that they've been throwing around? 4K, 8K, 120 FPS. Well, how does the Xbox factor in with the likes of ray tracing, all those other buzzwords, and Minecraft? A very, very relatively simplistic game. Well, how does it perform? And to give you a very, very quick and brief answer, not very well. How not very well, you might ask? 1080p, variable between 30 and 60 FPS in Minecraft. Just let that sink in for a second. Now, of course, I've said it like 4 times at this point, but I do want to reiterate it one more time. This is not indicative of how Minecraft will look and run at the end when it finally does come out on the Xbox with ray tracing. But if such a game as simplistic as this has to take such a huge hit in both the frame rate and resolution, not even to mention effects and textures and stuff, because they're very, very basic and simplistic in Minecraft as it is, well, this has me very, very worried for everything else and the direction that these consoles are going. To me, if this is any indication, this screams we're looking at another, no, I shouldn't say another 30 FPS generation, because it seems to me like they might have two options per game, or maybe they won't. Maybe developers will just prioritize the wrong thing, like they've been doing for the last two generations in 15 years. But maybe we'll be looking at either 30 FPS with visuals cranked up and ray tracing, or minimum settings or medium settings, whatever it is, and 4K 60. This is a big problem. This is a very, very big problem. And they've been saying it this entire time. And they've been using these marketing buzzwords and throwing around the marketing and all. And I've been saying the entire time, remember, not every teraflop is created equal. And these companies completely oversell everything that these boxes can do. Let's use the Xbox One X, for example. Technically, it can do native 4K. But any game that runs in native 4K looks like shit. The Division 2 runs at lower than lowest quality settings. And it runs at 24 to 27 FPS while being native 4K. Just remember that. These companies have been saying 4K, 8K, 60 FPS, 120 FPS, 240 FPS, and ray tracing. All in the same breath. All in the same sentence. I will remind you that as early as about 6 months prior to the original Xbox One launch, that's right, originally 2013 one, they were touting 60 frames per second in every game. There's official Sony marketing from 1 week beforehand than Watch Dogs 1 launched, where official Sony marketing said the game ran at 1080p 60 FPS. Remember, don't believe anything these companies say. Why? Because they will fucking lie to you, as they do, or they will twist words, or they will cherry pick arguments, or whatever it is. You know why? Because these companies have people that are paid hundreds of thousands to be able to twist, convince, contort the truth, and lie to you in order to make your money, make their money from your money. Just remember that. We have to wait and see what the finished product, the final end goal of this will be like. But I don't know, I just think this is going to be an absolute mess, and this has me exceptionally worried, which doubly worries me because of how I had, through my own fault, I should have known better, some slight semblance of hope for this generation. But anyway, that is it for the Xbox part of this. We'll move on to another one we're going to talk about. And we're going to talk about the PS5 specs in general. Now, we've already covered, or well, many people over the course of the entire week have covered the PS5 specs, the deep dives and whatnot too. And yes, it is a fact, it is 100% confirmed and 100% official that pretty much, almost at least, almost everything is worse than the Xbox. Runs at slower speeds, has lesser units, or whatever it is. There is one exception to this rule, and that is the SSD speed, which is twice as high. It's roughly 2.4 gigabits per second on the Xbox in its base form, and it's about 5.5 on the PS4. Then both of those numbers will double using their own custom magic and all that in there too. Now, naturally, of course, Sony fanboy damage control, corporate shill slavery have been saying that this makes the console better overall in every single way, shape and form. And they've been wondering what the deal is and how does this change it. Well, there's a couple of things to consider when it moves from not only such a slow 5400 RPM drive, like even in the previous consoles, to a regular SSD, let alone an NVMe SSD, which is extremely fast, which is what are in these new consoles, as well as, well, what anyone should have in a computer for the last few years. At least if you built it within the last maybe 3 years. But anyway, the reason for this is it changes game design. It doesn't just increase load speeds or decrease load speeds, I should say, or decrease load times. Yeah, decrease load times. So in effect, it does affect the game design ever so slightly as well. A quick example of this, because it can load so much more in at such speeds. In fact, when you look at a regular hard drive compared to one of these SSDs, you're talking maybe like a 40, 50, 60, up to 100 in theory % increase. not 100%, factor of 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 80, 100 of load speeds and load times. So that's significant. The example for this is Horizon Zero Awards. When you remember Horizon Zero Awards when they first, well, when it first launched on the PS4, I should say, there was no flight in that game. Now, the studio have come out and said they wanted to put flight in it, but the hard drive was too slow. They couldn't get assets off the drive fast enough in order to do so. So a game design choice, in this case flying, had to be removed in order to incorporate the piece of shit hardware that was in there as well. So yes, some game design will change a little thanks to SSDs overall. Now, I question how much of this is going to be. I mean, people have blown it up and said that this is the true next gen because this speed is twice as fast as the Xbox. This is number one. This makes the console better in every way, shape, and form. No, not really. But it makes me wonder, like, let's take a quick example. Look at the Dead Rising games on Xbox 360, and then look at Dead Rising 3 on the Xbox One. So there's a big difference there in not just for. That one was more so in RAM and video capabilities and processing power and all as well. But it's like that on a much larger scale. So, for example, you could be walking down a corridor and that corridor would have a 90-degree turn. And when you're going down the corridor and you turn around it, and just as you're about to and whatnot, it would start loading in the assets for the new area and deloading the ones that you've already been in. So, it would change it. So, in a sense that now you might not have to have that corridor. You might be able to just have one straight path between everything with massive detail and all that too. But again, you have to wonder how big and important is that going to play into it. But this also comes back to one other thing as well. Because the speed on the SSD is significantly faster, twice as fast, on the PS5 versus the Xbox, you have to remember that means that probably only Sony first-party studios will take proper, true advantage of this because they are designing 100% around that specific piece of hardware. When you look at multi-platform games, they have to aim for the lowest common denominator, in this case, which would be the speed of the Xbox One's drive, but at the same time, it would also be the processing power and grunt of the PS5. So it's a weird balance in that way. But Sony's first-party devs wouldn't have that constriction. They would just be targeting this one particular unit and just going from there. And we've seen that over time on the PS3, the PS4 as well, that they can get more out of it because, well, first-party devs and all as well. And you can also say it down to, more, hell, they're arguably more skilled developers at this point than, say, Microsoft has or anything like that. So I do think that Sony first-party games might be, I won't say a cut above because I don't really feel that it will be that big of a jump, but they will have a slightly noticeable improvement in some ways when it comes to that. But I don't think it's going to be the whole next generational jump from Xbox to PlayStation 5. Like, it's not going to be Xbox and PlayStation 5 just because of that. It might be, Xbox, PlayStation 5 when it comes to first party stuff as well, with the difference you're going to see in there as well. But anyway, all I care about is that finally these consoles are no longer pieces of shit, or at least not as much of a piece of shit as they have previously been in the last two generations. So let's just have The Last of Us Part 2 with a 60 FPS, 4K max settings, remastered version, launch day 1 on PS5. I'll be happy for that one. I will be very happy for that one. But anyway, we can move on to something that no one is happy about, or everyone is happy about, depending on how you look at it, depending on different sides of the camp here. We're talking GameStop. Now, this time it's mostly GameStop and the US and Canada, and they're back in the news for being greedy shitlords. Now, originally, GameStop in the US were trying to stay open during all the forced shutdowns. If you don't know what that is, basically, many retail outlets in the company in different states and all were labeled as essential or non-essential, depending on what way it was. Typically, essential stuff would be the likes of supermarkets, where you can get all your naturally your food and stuff, and certain eateries and whatnot. So you could just have takeaway, or you could have a delivery order or something like that, so you could still have food. And typically restaurants wouldn't allow you to go in and sit down anywhere for safety reasons and all too. And of course, all of this is due to the spread of the coronavirus and all as well. Well, GameStop decided, hey, we are going to deem ourselves essential as essential retail, so we can allow ourselves to stay open. That's right. GameStop deemed themselves essential retail because they believe that they enhanced the work from home experience that is becoming increasingly more prevalent because of the coronavirus. And they cited stuff like keyboards, mice, monitors, webcams, microphones, etc., 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 because of all of this. And it may not surprise you, but they actually didn't list the games and consoles or handhelds in any way, shape, or form during this whole reclassification, if you will. So basically it means they're greedy cunts and just want to stay open and get as much money as possible. This goes with the whole thing along the lines of they weren't offering people paid time off, which I'm not surprised. Then again, that's a whole other argument, but I'm not going to really get into it. They weren't really offering paid time off. They weren't supplying people with the necessary sanitation, cleaning equipment, PPE, that's personal protective equipment, stuff like that, that you should need in order to not only protect your business, but protect yourselves, the people working for you, and the customers. Again, this is no surprise whatsoever coming from GameStop because, well, it's GameStop. Now, they've even tried, and when I say they, it's a head office and upper management, have even tried to block local cops, local law enforcement, local government officials and all that as well from shutting them down. They have these memos and info to contact head office, who to contact about it, and the fact that they deem themselves essential, blah, 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 yada, 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 fuck GameStop. Now, aside from this, staff have unofficially reported basically that, like I said, GameStop are not offering people paid time off. There's one or two caveats to that. And they're not providing them proper cleaning supplies, proper protective equipment and all that too. But a few days later, one of the conference calls talking about all of this, it was leaked. And the leaks and the details and the language and the wording and all and just the general tone of it and the context was pretty fucking damning about it. So where all of this completely fucked them over. I did mention earlier that there was one or two slight caveats for the whole paid time off thing. Naturally, executives like, head office people, HR, vice presidents, and just general executives, they usually are a cut above everyone else in what they're given as benefits and stuff too. So basically, if you worked as a regular staff member in there, or if they had a supervisor or something like that, you were shit out of luck. If you were an assistant manager or store manager, you had the option to basically self-isolate and take time off in that regard, and use your personal time off for your PTO, your paid time off, personal time off, whatever time it is that your company defines it as. And of course, it doesn't really apply to any of the higher ups because they're the big cunts in the businesses. And they're the ones that will probably work from home and get fully paid and get benefits and all this bullshit too. Now, of course, after all of this, GameStop and EB Games being the Canadian branch of GameStop, they've announced that they're shutting down all stores, or at least all the in-store customer transactions and whatnot in the US and Canada, effective today, March 22nd, 2020. Of course, this was after they got completely savaged and slaughtered. And not only that, but in certain regions around the world, in certain regions in the countries, what was happening was the local governments were pulling some of GameStop businesses' licenses. GameStop business licenses, there you go. So they were legally not allowed to trade and whatnot. So they were pulled by the government just to force them to shut them down, because that's how much they were mistreating the regular rank and file staff, including the assistant managers and the store managers. And now what they're doing is they're offering digital online sales only and curbside pickup of them. So basically, if you buy something online, they will still ship it out to you. Or if you have it in a local store, you may be able to just go outside the store and someone will deliver it to you, if you will, right outside the one, and pick it up at the front door. So all I can say about this whole situation is that the sooner these fucking cunt of a company go out of business, fuck you, Reggie, by the way, the sooner they go out of business and the sooner they're fucking gonzo, the better. Just absolute shithole, terrible company to work for. Believe me, I've worked there, and even at management level, it's fucking the company, the higher up company, the head office, the decisions, the executives and all that you have to deal with are just fucking tool bags. They're just the worst, and the decisions they make are just so counterproductive in basically every way, shape and form. Fuck this company, round the world, Ireland, Canada, US, everywhere else. The sooner they're gone, the fucking better. Well, moving away from GameStop onto other companies and other brands and all that are trying to do something about this global epidemic, although one of them is actually trying to help, the other is just GameStop being cunts. But we have internet data. Now, previously we talked about internet data in the US and how companies were lifting their completely fake, completely arbitrary data caps because, well, they're complete bullshit in order to just fuck consumers over. Now, it's kind of weird in this one because we're going to talk about Europe, and we're going to talk about Netflix, and we're going to talk about YouTube. So, with everyone being stuck at home, be it work from home or removed from school or just people shutting themselves in, Netflix and YouTube, as well as everyone else, has reported massive spikes in internet usage, which makes perfect sense in 2020. Now, Netflix and YouTube are going to help combat this, basically, because there's theories and beliefs, which are partially true in a way, that the internet lines and whatnot can be clogged up and congested, basically. Clogged up, maybe not the better term, but congested, just kind of slowing it down for everyone. There's no proper limit on all of this, if you will, in the way that, say, companies will try to fuck you over with a data cap for it. But anyway, what is happening here is Netflix and YouTube are cutting bandwidth usage to try to keep the networks from completely blowing up and overloading, in Europe at least anyway. So what Netflix have announced is that they're going to reduce quality in bandwidth only by 25%. So what they've said is if you stream Netflix in high definition for, I believe it's an hour, it uses 2 gigabyte of data, so drop that down by 500 MB. And of course, if you're streaming, I think they've said 4K on Netflix is 700 MB. Again, drop that down by 25%, so you get the idea. Now, it's not only them, YouTube are doing it as well, and YouTube aren't reducing the quality when it comes to bandwidth. They're defaulting every video to standard definition. So, I know usually when I open a video on my phone or my monitor or whatever it is, it will usually open in at least 720p 60 or 1080 60, or if I'm opening it on a PC, or if it's rendered higher at least anyway, it will open at, maybe 1440 60 or 4K 60. Depends on the video and all. But typically, now at least anyway, they're opening, I tested this out to confirm it and to make sure. I opened up videos that I've personally made in various resolutions and frame rates, as well as other ones that I knew were in high definition, and yes, they're all automatically defaulting to 360p. So yeah, they are actually doing this. This is a real thing. Now, there's this all ties in with a different false narrative that's been making the rounds, and that everyone, specifically the real media, if you will, like the TV stations, the newspapers and whatnot too, is that they're trying to blame gaming and gaming related bandwidth and, well, basically gamers. Now, here is the big problem with this. This has all been analyzed. We have the metrics for this and all as well. There are studies to show all this, as well as the rough quoted usage and whatnot too. So, gaming, of course there are one or two exceptions, because someone is just going to come out and say, oh, well, there's this one game that uses 16 gigabit. No, relax. 99.9% is what we're talking about here. So, gaming in general uses very, very little internet bandwidth per hour. Significantly lower than streaming TV shows and movies. In fact, most gaming sessions, remember, most being the keywords, will set you back about several hundred MB per hour. That's it, several hundred MB per hour, versus a standard hour of HD usage on Netflix being several gigabytes. Then let alone a 4K version, which is even higher when it comes to that. So yes, they use significantly more. There is one exception to this whole thing, which everyone should cut out, remove, whatever it is, to help everyone, including yourself, and not just internet related stuff wise as well. This of course is Google Stadia, which is absolute trash in both the usage of it as well as the quality of it, and well, it's just a shitty product overall. So yeah, you get the worst of both worlds. Don't fucking use Google Stadia ever. Do yourself a favor and just throw it out the fucking window. The money you wasted on that could have been 50% of a proper console. That's right. I recommend people playing a fucking console over Google Stadia. I think I said it in a video before. Imagine how bad Google Stadia has to be for me to recommend playing a Switch over playing Google Stadia. Yeah. Fucking Google Stadia. It's so bad. But anyway, speaking of internet gaming, or at least PC gaming, but we're going to flip it on its head and go with the proper quality side of it. The top end PC Master Race version, where you get the best experience every time. We're going to talk about Steam, or we're going to talk about Epic, depending on which side of the fence you sit on. Because recently, we had an interview with Gabe Newell. That's right, Lord Gaben himself, who is the head of, you guessed it, Valve, which means he's the head of Steam. Now, he has echoed a sentiment that I have always said, but there are some aspects of it that I don't agree with. He says competition with Epic is good for the consumer in the long run, but it's ugly in the short term. Now, I'm going to pull it back for a quick second, because everyone's going to say, Q, you never agreed with that. I've always said competition is good, legitimate, healthy competition is good, and it breeds innovation in certain markets, like, for example, consoles and games and whatnot. So, what we're going to do is we're going to analyze this a little bit. So, like he said, it's ugly in the short term, which so far, given the whole Epic Games thing we've seen, it is very, very ugly in the short term. Now, he is technically correct. We did talk about how competition is good overall, at least in the regular sense of it. But in its current form and the current situation between Epic Games and Valve, between the Epic Games Store and Steam, I just don't see how this is offering any consumer level beneficial competition. And I don't see how it can be going forward either at the moment. Because so far, when you look at all these games that Epic Games has bought up, timed exclusive wise and all as well, only one of these games have actively reduced their price to consumers. I believe it was Metro Exodus. They said that because of the increased revenue share that they were getting from Epic Games, and this of course is ignoring the millions and millions of dollars they got for the timed exclusivity on it, but just the percentage, which was typically originally at the time anyway, 30% would go to Valve and 70% would go to developer or the publisher. But on Epic Games Store, 88% goes to the developer, publisher, whoever it is, and 12% goes to Epic. So Metro Exodus devs said, okay, because of the money, the differential in these profit sharing, revenue, cut, whatever it is, we can make the same amount of money and sell the game $10, €10, whatever it is, cheaper to the consumer because of this. But no. These companies are still taking the massive multi-million dollar deals from Epic, taking the higher percentage revenue share at 88%, but they're charging the same price for their game. They're still charging €60 for it, like they would on Epic, and like they would on Steam. See, this is what doesn't compute to me at this moment. And not only that, but if the game prices are the same, and the features, which are either the same or have so far been worse, where's the competition? You see what I mean? This doesn't make sense to me. And besides, when you look at it, everyone still buys everything on Steam at launch anyway, if launched on the same time. Because people don't want to use the Epic Game Store as the regular main launcher, and as people still want to go and buy games on Steam if given the choice. If the two of them launch on there at the same price at the same time, Steam has more features, more content, more quality. Epic Game Store doesn't, and it's the same price. Where's the competition? Maybe if it was €10 cheaper at launch, people might be inclined to move over and buy it. But that, so far, hasn't been the case. Now, there is probably one exception to this as well when it talks that, everyone wants to buy stuff on Steam, of course. This is with the exception of the GOG hipster fan base. Of course, they hate completely everything except for GOG. But, the thing is they don't really count because they don't play modern games, because most modern games don't launch on GOG. It's basically pretty much like the Switch version of the digital storefront on PC. But yeah, they don't count. They're a bunch of filthy hipsters. So yeah, I mean, it's okay if you want to use GOG to play the retro stuff. I completely endorse that. But if your whole argument is Steam bad, not GOG, Epic bad, not GOG, yeah, I just don't consider your opinion in any way, shape, or form, and neither does anyone else really, because you're a fucking hipster joke. Damn people. But anyway, that is it for the main points of contention during our lovely little episode 50 of our Quack Experimental Podcast. Now, of course, we will round it out with the best segment, the reason why everyone is here every single week. Q, what's the deal? What's up? What's going down? What's going on? What are you playing? What is the 411? Well, as we all know, Doom Eternal launched recently. It is a fantastic game. It is a phenomenal game. It is an amazing game. It is one of the best FPS games in modern history, in modern memory. In fact, the only one that I could possibly consider even at the same tier of it in modern memory is Doom 2016, my second favorite game of 2016, dwarfed only by Tokyo Mirage Sessions on the Wii U of all things. But hey, I'm an Atlas JRPG guy. In fact, I'm a JRPG guy just in general, but an Atlas one, that's what I'm talking about. That is what I'm talking about. But yeah, Doom Eternal is fantastic. I finished it earlier this morning. I have about 95% of the game done. In regards to like unlocks and stuff like that, I went back through a bunch of the levels and all. Some of the stuff is just a bitch to do. But I'm going to take a little bit of a break from it. I've been going hard. What I'm going to do is over the next couple of weeks and months and all, I'm going to casually go back, maybe do one mission at a time. I have about 50% of the missions completely 100%ed, and then the rest of them I'm only missing 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 little collectibles and stuff in them. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to space it out so I keep fresh, I keep up, and I keep the skills sharp, and that way when the DLC comes out, I'll have everything 100%ed, and I'll be able to jump right into it, skills still going, and I'll be completely maxed out and completely upgraded at the same time, so that'll be pretty damn solid. I've also played the Trials of Mana and Resident Evil 3 demos this week. The Trials of Mana demo was damn fun. Thankfully I got it sorted because I was having a bit of a G-Sync, V-Sync screen tearing problem because, well, it's either the demo being coded the way the demo is, or, well, I would say hopefully the full game fixes it, but realistically, the latest NVIDIA driver allowed me to do a workaround that wasn't working beforehand. So, yay, go me. Trials of Mana's demo is really good. I'm looking forward to the full game. I can't wait. And the Resident Evil 3 demo is as expected. It's fantastic. It's like Resident Evil 2 remake, but Resident Evil 3, and it's really damn good. Especially when you take into consideration the likes of that fucker Nemesis, because, well, if you thought T103 was rough, you ain't seen nothing yet. Now, having said that, I am unfortunately still waiting on my Animal Crossing New Horizons, but thankfully, earlier today I got the notification that it will be delivered on the next working day, which is tomorrow, which is Monday. And unfortunately, I am working on Monday. But this ties in with something really well. So what we've been doing lately, and by lately I mean starting yesterday/today, is that the company is cutting back a little bit, luckily. So I will be working about 4 days a week. I will still get my extra day off paid as usual, which is beautiful in that way. And yeah, so Animal Crossing should be here Monday. I'm off Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week. That's fun. That is very, very fun. So I'm looking forward to completely losing myself in Animal Crossing for hopefully 3 days anyway. And that is going to be great. Until then, I can only just kind of coast along on that, relaxing, maxing, relaxing, chillaxing, whatever it is. until I think our next big release is Resident Evil, which is about a week and a half, 2 weeks away. That's at the start of next month anyway. And then I have about a week with that to go hard. And then we're talking the big one, Final Fantasy VII Remake. Yeah, boy. And then I have about 2 weeks until Trials of Mana comes out. So it's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good time. We've been packed between Doom being the high mark, the pinnacle of the start, the kickoff. Well, we'll have to see what happens. The only thing that could make this better is if all these games that I'm going to play over the next month and a half, 2 months, are fantastic, which they probably will be. I have great, exceptional taste, as we all know, so I only play good games, and which is why I ridicule bad games like the Dark Souls series, the Souls series, and Nier. But yeah, there's the only thing that could make it better is if the Analog Pocket launched. I have been dying to play some Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games for months now, and I've specifically been holding off because I would love to stream them while I can play them on the Wii U. I would love to be able to do them on the proper original cartridge, which I already have. And of course, because the Pocket is portable, hence the name Pocket, it would come in more useful. So I'm hoping to stream a bunch of that stuff. Hopefully it launches soon. They did announce that final NT mini run, which fucking drove me insane. But yeah, we will wait and see anyway. But until then, we will leave it here for the end of this week. Our Quack Experimental Podcast 50th episode. 1 year anniversary celebration coming up next week. I do have special surprise, a special whatever it is, a special in store is the main thing there anyway, but that is for next week, and then you can worry about that. In the meantime, let me know in the comment section below thoughts, feelings, opinions, questions, butthurt, whatever it is about any of the topics we talked about here today. As usual, of course, hit the appropriate button to let me know how it did on the video, and while you're at it, why not head on over and hit the subscribe button and even ring that little notification bell. Granted, getting a notification from YouTube in current year when one of these beautiful little high quality, amazing, proper, true opinion episodes comes up every weekend, well, that's a whole other story, but at least you can say you tried. Am I right? As always, thank you so much for watching, and remember, winners don't play switchboards.